Good evening, everybody. Tonight we're going to read Ezra chapter 6. I'll begin verse 1. Then Darius, the sovereign, made a decree, and a search was made in the house of the books, wherein also the treasures of Babel were kept. We read in the previous chapter that there were some people that sent letters to Darius, to see if he could check if the Yahudim had permission to build. So he did. It says, then Darius the sovereign made a decree, and a search was made in the house of the books, wherein also the treasures of Babel were kept. And at Achmeta, in the palace, which is in the province of Media, a scroll was found, and this was written in it. Now we have the meanings already, but and I know we're going to see them later, or let me look real quick at Meta. Let me check it. A capital of Media captured by Cyrus, and then I'll continue just a moment. I'm trying to figure out what meaning could we give to this, to the name of the city. Yeah, so everybody says that it is the city, but nobody says what the name of the city means. And I guess through the letters, the way it's written, perhaps we can say something. Verse 2, it is Achmeta. Interesting, because it is formed by Ach, which is brother. So with the brother, Ach, this would be death. Well, not death, but as in the brother who died, or the brother is dead. Ach, if we see as met, right? Or mut, with the vibe in the middle, which comes from mavet, death. And aleph, as in the brother who died first. So an interesting name. As I always say, right? Yahushua is the word, so we find him in every word. And we see, for example, this one. We see brother, right? Ach, mem, and the taf, a dead brother. And then an aleph, right? The dead brother is the first, because the aleph is the first letter, and it has the numerical value of 1. Or we could say the dead brother is the ox, the last, because they both have to die, right? One as the first and one as the ox of Yom Kippur. So the brother who will die as first, the brother who will die as the ox. Also, if we take away this space right here, we have these letters, right? Let's say I take this one to the front and, well, leave that one right there. We have true brother, or the brother is the truth, emet. But let me take it back to the last, right? Here we have the aleph taf, first and last. The brother who is Mashiach, letter mem, is first and last, aleph taf. So several ways of seeing it, like I said, all connected with Mashiach, and also even with the last, mainly with the first, who is emet, truth. Brother A is dead, as in first. So Achmeta. So, and at Achmeta, in the palace, which is in the province of Media, a scroll was found, and this was written in it. And like I said, Mashiach is the word, and that is the place where they found word regarding this subject. They found a letter, a writing that showed the truth about what they were asked. So, and this was written in it. In the first year of sovereign Koresh made a decree concerning the house of Elah, the house of the mighty one. As we know, Yahweh prophesied on Isaiah 45 about this sovereign coming to the world and conquering Babel and giving a decree to rebuild the city and the temple, as also Daniel prophesied on Daniel 9. So he did, as we see here, and this led Darius to send a decree, and then that led to Artaxerxes to send a couple decrees until finally the temple was built. So in the first year of Sovereign Koresh made a decree concerning the house of Elah at Jerusalem. Let the house be built in the place where they brought offerings, and its foundation strongly laid, its height 60 cubits, its width 60 cubits. 60 plus 60 gives us 120, which are the number of jubilees that there would be during history, and the number of years given to Noah for him to prepare the ark, representing the end when the last would come, the Son of Man, as in the days of Noah. Also 60 and 60, as in 6 and 6, as in the 12 months, the two pillars, the two parts, as in height and width, first and last. So let the house be built in the place where they brought offerings, and its foundation strongly laid. Its height 60 cubits, its width 60 cubits, which also connects with the New Jerusalem mentioned in the book of Revelation as a cube. 60 times 60 gives us 3,600, which can be seen as 3 years and 6 months, like the time of the two witnesses prophesying for 1,260 days, 3 years and 6 months. So 3 rows of heavy stones and 1 row of new timber. 3 rows of heavy stones, for instance, like the 3 separations of the 6 millenniums of history, 2,000 years where death reigned, then the law and the prophets, then came favor and the truth through Mashiach. Also the 3 patriarchs and the 3 men sent by Yahweh, Mashiach, Eliyahu, and the prophet like Moshe. So 3 rows of heavy stones and 1 row of new timber. 3 plus 1, 4, like the numerical value, well, the number of letters of the name Yahweh, the number of levels of interpretation, levels of creation. Of those 4 levels, 1 is above and beyond the rest, which is Atzilut, emanation, like the Yud, before the 3 letters that reach the line, reach the bottom, the Yud stays on top, separate as Yahweh himself. So like the timber here, which is separate from the 3 rows of stones. Also, we could say the timber being the Ruach that is given to those 3 men and 3 patriarchs. So 3 rows of heavy stones and 1 row of new timber. Let the expenses be paid from the sovereign's house. And let the gold and silver utensils of the house of Elah, which Nebuchadnezzar took from the Heikal, which is in Jerusalem, the temple, which is in Jerusalem, and brought to Babel, be returned and go to the Heikal, which is in Jerusalem, to its place, and deposit them in the house of Elah. The utensils represent the many. The temple are the few, the utensils are the many. So look how it first refers to the few, like the wheat in the harvest of Revelation 14, and then it mentions the utensils like the grapes, which are the many in Revelation 14. So 3 rows of heavy stones and 1 row of new timber, let the expenses be paid from the sovereign's house. Also, the 3 and 1 is the relation that I always mention regarding the many and the few. The many is 3, the 1 is the few, like Lot, his wife, and 2 daughters, right? 1 and 3, like Daniel and his 3 friends, like the wheat and barley, the price of it during the 3rd seal, and many other things. 1 and 3, few and many. So the 3 rows of heavy stone, like the many, which connect in this case with the land Galad, which meant well, a mountain of witness, also mountain of rocks. So 3 rows of heavy stones and 1 row of new timber, as in the few are the trees who give fruit and who take the cross and follow Mashiach. So the timber, 1 row of new timber. And look how it says new, as in the few who are at the end, the last. So they are new in terms of history compared to the past, right? So, and let the gold and silver utensils of the house of Elah, if we are going to separate, like I separated in this case 3 rows of heavy stones, the many, and 1 row of new timber, the few. In this case, the gold are the few and the silver are the many. But if we are going to take the whole context as the temple, those are the few, and now the utensils, those are the many. Hopefully, no confusion. So, and let the gold and silver utensils of the house of Elah, which Nebuchadnezzar took from the Heikal, which is in Jerusalem, and brought to Babel, be returned and go to the Heikal, which is in Jerusalem. So that is like a prophecy of Yahweh gathering the few and the many to take them to Jerusalem, to its place, and deposit them in the house of Elah. Now, Tattenai, governor beyond the river, and Shetar Boznai, and your companions, the officials beyond the river, stay away from there. How nice. So look how it says, now Tattenai, governor beyond the river, and Shetar Boznai, and your companions, the officials beyond the river, stay away from there. Leave the work of this house of Elah alone. Let the governor of the Yahudim and the elders of the Yahudim build this house of Elah on its place. Remember that in Persia, there was something interesting regarding the king, which was that if he made a decree, nobody could change it, not even himself. If he would decree something, that was done. And that connects with the word of Yahweh. Once it was written, that is for eternity, is what it is. It's truth. That's it. So that's why we see in the book of Esther that when Haman convinces Ahasuerus to kill the Yahudim, then he makes a decree. And when he realizes that his wife was one of them, instead of breaking the decree or deciding that is no longer valid, he makes another decree so that the Yahudim can defend themselves from those who wanted to kill them. So in this case, we see that Darius sees that there was a decree regarding the building of the temple, so he simply says, stay away from there, leave them do their job, because that was a decree and it won't be changed. So, and I make a decree, that was Darius' decree right after Koresh's decree. And I make a decree as to what you should do for the elders of these Yahudim, for the building of this house of Elah. Let the exact expense be paid to these men from the sovereign's resources out of the taxes beyond the river, so that they are not stopped. Let the exact expense be paid to these men from the sovereign's resources out of the taxes beyond the river, so that they are not stopped. So look how they wanted to stop them. So they gave word to the king, acting as informers. And the king actually ended up helping those who were building and giving them money, resources, even from the taxes beyond the river, which is where those people who were accusers lived, and therefore used those taxes, that money. So those who were the accusers ended up in a worse position, and therefore the Yahudim in a better position, even though it seemed to be something negative, which shows how all things are for the good of those who love Yahweh. Because these people wanted to stop the building, they gave information to the king, and the king, with that information, actually decided to help them instead of stopping them. So that shows how Yahweh is good. He if we have his favor through Mashiach, he will help us even when people try to destroy us, try to stop us. So they are not stopped, so that they are not stopped. And whatever they need, both young bulls and rams and lambs for the ascending offerings of the Elah of heaven, wheat, salt, wine, and oil, according to the request of the priests who are in Jerusalem, let it be given them day by day without fail, so that they bring pleasing offerings to the Elah of heavens and pray for the life of the sovereign and his sons. So look how the king even included himself when it comes to the prayers sent to Yahweh. Both young bulls connecting to the bull, rams connecting with Eliyahu, and lambs connecting with Mashiach for the ascending olot, fire offerings of the mighty one of heaven. Wheat, the few, salt is wisdom in this case, since well, when it comes to people, the wine are the many, the wheat are the few, the oil are the priests or the martyrs. The salt would be the wise. But when it comes to what it represents in the sense of, well, in this case, wheat would be teaching, salt will be wisdom, wine would be joy, oil would be the ruach. Through the ruach, the oil, we will have light, we will rejoice, we will understand, we will have wisdom of that which we consume, read, study. According to the request of the priests who are in Jerusalem, let it be given them day by day without fail, so that they bring pleasing offerings to the Elah of heaven and pray for the life of the sovereign and his sons. And I make a decree that whoever changes this word, let a timber be pulled from his house and let him be impaled, hanged on it, and let his house be made a dunghill because of this. This is pretty amazing. It shows once again the importance of those decrees, how important it was to fulfill it, the respect and honor that Darius was given his previous sovereign, Koresh, who had given the previous decree. Also, it said that, well, some believe Koresh and Darius were one and the same. That makes no sense with this chapter, of course. In that case, that would mean that Yahweh was a title, and therefore this would be another king who had that title as well. Of course, that's how they would interpret it. But other than that, also connects with what the story of Esther, which I was talking about, because Haman wanted to kill the Yahudim. He wanted to destroy the temple, which is the people in which the spirit of Yahweh dwells. So Haman wanted to destroy the people representing the temple. And what happened with him? He made he used his bed to build something so that he could hang Mordechai. And when the time came, Haman himself was hanged on that which he built to kill Mordechai, pretty much like we find here. And we could say that Darius pretty much was used to prophesy what would happen to Haman for going against the people of Yahweh as the temple. And I make a decree that whoever changes this word, as Haman wanted to do so, let a timber be pulled from his house. In this case, it was his own bed pulled from his house and used to hang him, because he couldn't rest until he could kill Mordechai. So that's why he turned his bed into a well, let me see what is the word used in Esther. So let's see at the end. And they hanged Haman on the wooden structure. Well, yeah, a structure. I was trying to figure out how was it called? Wooden structure that he had prepared for Mordecai, and the sovereign's wrath abated. So Haman was hanged on the wooden structure. Look how there was a curse given by Darius of those who would come against the temple. Let a timber be pulled from his house, and let him be impaled, hanged on it. That's what they did to Haman for coming against Israel. And to pull a timber from the house pretty much represents what happens when you take the man of the house and kill him. You are taking away the support of the house. So that's why the representation of taking away a pillar, a timber of the house to hang the person, and therefore the house could come down after that, which was part of the curse that would come as a consequence of the actions of the person against the decrees of the king. So, and Elah, who has caused his name to dwell, look how important, and Elah, the mighty one, who has caused his name to dwell there. His name to dwell there. That shows that the name is a person. That person is Mashiach, the image of Yahweh. That's why he didn't put an image in the temple. He put his name, because the soul of Mashiach is his name. And that's why Mashiach said, destroy the temple, and I will raise it up in 3 days, talking about his body, because he is the name. That's why he also said, I come in the name of my Father, and you do not receive me. When somebody comes in his own name, you will receive. So, and Elah, who has caused his name to dwell there, that was the presence of Yahweh in the temple. So the presence of Yahweh in the temple is the name in the temple. Therefore, to have the presence in you, you must have the name in you. That's how it works, right? It's just logical. And that's why John says that the name, in the name of Mashiach, we receive the Ruach HaKodesh. So, who has caused his name to dwell there, and Elah, who has caused his name to dwell there, does overthrow any sovereign or people who put their hand to change, to destroy this house of Elah, which is in Jerusalem. Look how amazing. Once again, that's why that happened to Haman. And then what will happen to Rome? Well, some happen, but more will. And I mean because of the destruction of the temple in the year 70. And Elah, who has caused his name to dwell there, does overthrow any sovereign or people who put their hand to change, to destroy this house of Elah, which is in Jerusalem. I, that Yahweh, make the decree, let it be done promptly. Then Tatenai, governor beyond the river, Shetar, Bosnai, and their companions promptly did according to what Darius the sovereign had sent. And the elders of the Yahudim were building, and they were blessed through the prophesying of Haggai. Interesting. I already read part of it last week. I don't know if I should go because it might take forever. And the elders of the Yahudim were building, and they were blessed through the prophesying of Haggai, the prophet, and Zechariah, son of Iddo. Same prophets mentioned last week. Once again, Haggai and Zechariah could be interpreted as the two witnesses. And they built and finished it. Haggai means my feast. Zechariah means he who is remembered by Yahweh, and Iddo, his prophet. So during his feast, he will remember his witness, his prophet. I said his prophet, I think, but it means his witness. So during the feast, he will remember his witness. And they built and finished it according to the decree of Elah of Israel, and according to the decree of Koresh and Darius and Artashashta, sovereign of Persia. So we see the third one who made two decrees for the completion of the temple. And this house was completed on the third day of the month of Adar. And this house was completed on the third day of the month of Adar, which was in the 6th year of the reign of sovereign Darius. The third day of the 12th month, that would have been a Tuesday, the day 336 of the calendar. And you see there's a star there because if you go to the 12th month, that of Naphtali, we have on the third day Ezra 6:15. So it was saying, and this house was completed on the third day of the month of Adar, which was in the 6th year of the reign of sovereign Darius. Then the children of Israel, the priests and the Levites and the rest of the sons of the exile did the dedication of this house of Elah with joy. Verse 16, the dedication, it says Chanukat Beit Elohah, right? It says Chanukat with a tav because it is this tav means that it is the dedication of the temple of Elah, of Elohim. My point is how Chanukkah means dedication. And that's why it became a feast eventually, because this same temple that they were building here was made impure by the Greek emperor, so they had to rededicate it. So that's why they made a Hanukkah, and that became the feast of Hanukkah. And also, since he did that, then that means that would be one of the reasons, or the reason why he was destroyed, meaning Antiochus Epiphanes, who was a representation of the beast. Then the children of Israel, the priests and the Levites and the rest of the sons of the exile did the dedication of this house of Elah with joy, and offered at the dedication of this house of Elah 100 bulls. 100 bulls. Imagine. The 100 is the letter Kuf. It represents the heavens, the end of time, and several other things, perfections, celestial perfections. So 100 bulls, 200 rams. 200 is the letter Resh, which is a head, authority. So we could say 100 bulls to bring the celestial to the earth, to open the heavens. 200 rams for the authority to manifest or to receive authority. 400 lambs, letter Tav, which refers to the end. So with 100 we have time, and with the 400 we have end, so the end of time. So 400 lambs, and the 400 also is a seal and a cross. So 400 lambs like the lamb on the cross. 200 rams like the ram got his head cut off. 200 is Resh. Yahuchanan Eliyahu, the ram, had his head cut off. 200, Resh. 100. He goes with the letter Kuf. Well, end times, it would fit with the last and the end of time. The last, opening the door to heaven, being the door Mashiach, coming in the end, in the feast of the end of the year, Yom Kippur, as the bull who dies on Yom Kippur. There are several connections also with Kots, which would be the thorn, connecting it with Paul, who mentioned a thorn, and also with Shimshon, who got his eyes pulled out. And I say that because the kuf can be seen as a thorn, a spike, or as a needle. That's why the eye of the needle, represented by the letter kuf. So 100 bulls, 200 rams, 400 lambs. And as a sin offering for all Israel, 12 male goats, according to the number of the tribes of Israel. 12 male goats, one goat for each tribe. Mashiach came as the male goat sacrificed on Yom Kippur. That's why he was placed next to Barabbas, and they chose Yahushua to be sacrificed, like the male goat was sacrificed for Yahweh. So 12 male goats for the people, for the many, like Mashiach came to die for the many as the male goat. Also, like the 12 months of the year, 100 bulls representing time itself. Interestingly enough, Kronos, Saturn, was represented as a bull, Kronos being the god of time. So 100 bulls as time itself, 200 rams as the two halves of the year, 6 months and 6 months, the two pillars, and 200 is a head. A head has two sides, like the year has two sides, 6 months each side. Not only that, panim is face, and it has the numerical value 180. Two panim would be 360. Two faces, 360 days of the year without counting the 4 that change the seasons. Then 400 lambs, like the 4 corners of the earth, the 4 seasons. In this case, 400 could say 4 times, since 100 is time, 4 times of the year. And the year begins with the lamb, Aries. Then, and as a sin offering for Israel, 12 male goats, the 12 months, according to the number of the tribes of Israel. And they appointed the priests to their divisions. They appointed the priests to their divisions and the Levites to their divisions over the service of Elah in Jerusalem, as it is written in the book of Moshe. Isn't Yahweh amazing? I was just talking about this, explaining the whole thing. I had no idea that we were going to read it. And they appointed the priests to their divisions. What divisions? The 24. How beautiful. To their divisions, and the Levites to their divisions over the service of Elah in Jerusalem, as it is written in the book of Moshe. And the sons of the exile performed the Pesach on the 14th of the month. On the 14th of the month. Remember, Pesach is on the 14th. It goes from the afternoon of the 14th till the afternoon of the 15th. So it begins on the 14th, and that's why on the night of the 14th, Mashiach ate with his disciples. And the sons of the exile performed the Pesach on the 14th of the month, of the first month. For the priests and the Levites had cleansed themselves. All of them were clean, and they slew the Pesach for all the sons of the exile, and for their brothers, the priests, and for themselves. And the children of Israel who had returned from the exile ate together with all who had separated themselves from the uncleanness of the nations of the land in order to seek Yahweh Elohim of Israel. So they celebrated Pesach, and look how then he mentions, and they perform Matzot, the feast of Matzot, because Pesach becomes Matzot. During the last 12 hours of Pesach begins the first 12 hours of Matzot, unleavened bread, showing how the people who went from Babel to Yehudah, when Koresh conquered it, they build the temple, like the 144,000 will be built as the temple. And they will become one with Mashiach, who is the lamb who was sacrificed on Pesach. Also, if everything begins on Pesach, everything would end on Pesach. And this represents the end, when the few and the many are gathered with Yahweh and Mashiach. So look how they were gathered and celebrated Pesach. So if everything begins, the last week of Daniel begins on Pesach, the end of the week of Daniel would be on Pesach. That's why it is possible for the war of Har-Megiddo to happen on Purim. I believe that it is possible for the war of Har-Megiddo to start or happen on the feast of Purim, and then that will be like a month till Pesach. And a month is 30 days. If you see the diagram where I put the numbers of the end times, there are 30 days at the very end. It could be connected with that time. Could be, because there are other times, you know how that is, a bunch of times. So depending on how you put it, like a puzzle. So, and they performed the feast of Matzot, unleavened bread. And the children of Israel who had returned from the exile ate together. The few and the many will eat together. They'll be one people. with all who had separated themselves from the uncleanness of the nations, right? Those who will separate themselves from all falsehood of the world, of the land, in order to seek Yahweh Elohim of Israel. That will be at the resurrection and transformation. They will be ready for that. And they perform the feast of Matzot, which are 7 days of feast, unleavened bread, because by that time the chosen few won't have leaven in them. They won't have any hypocrisy, any evil, because the inclination to evil would be gone by that time. And they perform the feast of Matzot, 7 days with joy. 7 days with joy, verse 22. And they did the feast of Matzot 7 days, besimcha, with joy, simcha. Look at this word. We have seen it before. And if we put it here, I will write it again without the vowel points. Joy. If we take this and put it here, ointment. Because if we put this here and take this here, we have the Messiah, Hamashiach, right? And this that I added would be the seed, the word of Yahweh that makes the anointed one, Hamashiach. So by saying, and they did Chag Matzot, the feast of Matzot, 7 days with Simcha, could be said, and they celebrated the feast of Matzot for 7 days with Mashiach. We could even say, and they celebrated the feast of Matzot on the 7th millennium with Mashiach, right? Hopefully it's understood why that could be interpreted as well that way. And they performed the feast of Matzot 7 days with joy, for Yahweh caused them to rejoice and turned the heart of the sovereign of Ashur toward them, to strengthen their hands in the work of the house of Elohim, the Elohim of Israel. And that's how it ends.